Hey everybody, this is the first part of my Avatar The Last Airbender vlog series. We're starting with the first episode. Technically two. We're going to start with both episodes introing the series, being The Boy and the Iceberg and The Avatar Returns. So I'm going to kind of say this for those who... I'm going to try and make these a little accessible for those who know the show and those who maybe don't know the show. So there's going to be these little bits of exposition, and if you know the show, this is already common practice to you, but if you don't know the show, hopefully I can catch you up to speed, because I do want you to kind of not follow along, but sort of be understanding the context of where I'm coming from when I talk about these episodes. So, just a little bit of a premise of the show. It is an animated show that aired on Nickelodeon from about 2005 to 2008. If you want to watch it now, it's available on Netflix, as is the live action remake. But it's a show that takes place in sort of a fantasy world where there are four separate nations, being the Water Tribes, Earth Kingdom, Fire Nation, and Air Nomads, kind of color coded. The DVD, water, earth, fire. And in these nations are people who are born who can manipulate one of the respective elements of their nation. And amongst these nations, there is a single person who is born every generation or so, known as the Avatar, who not only can bend all four elements, but also serves as sort of a spiritual bridge, a bridge, I guess, between the physical and the spiritual realm. And they serve as sort of the peacemakers of this world. This is all kind of explained in the intro, but if you're not going to see it, I'm just going to explain this to you anyway. So the show starts with a pair of siblings, a brother and sister named Sokka and Katara. And while they're out there, they live in the South Pole, the Southern Water Tribe, and as they're fishing, they come across a boy in an iceberg. Hey, title drop, where inside is a young boy named Aang and a sky bison, Appa. That's what this is. By the way, when I bought this thing, this was ridiculously hard to get. I had to contact the seller like 3 separate times. I got shipped the wrong product the first time. Not important, but it's Appa. I have it. You can tell it's real because of the eyes. The knockoffs have cloth eyes. Plus, much fluffier. I've had this thing like 10 years. Still looking pretty good, but that's not what you're here. You're here for reasons I can't ascertain. Maybe you're just bored. But anyway, Katara and Sokka. I'll try to get visual aids so you can follow who these people are as opposed to just looking at my dumb face. They come across this boy named Aang, who it turns out is actually an airbender. And this is a big deal because for the most of the world, airbenders have apparently been extinct, or at least not seen, for the last 100 years. And during that 100 years, the Fire Nation has waged war with the world. They have just completely almost conquered the entire world. Things are bad. So Aang comes along to Katara and Sokka. Sokka's not very trustworthy of him, but Katara is willing to trust him because he's kind of innocent and he's bringing a sense of fun and hope to the world. But little do they know, he is being hunted down by a man named Zuko, who is an exiled prince of the Fire Nation, who is hunting down the Avatar as it is the only thing that can restore his honor. So the first 2 episodes are following Katara and Sokka as they get to know Aang, and Aang is eventually captured by Zuko but escapes. And the trio decide to travel the world, learning all the elements and preparing Aang for when he has to... I missed a part, I'm very sorry. It turns out Aang is in fact the Avatar. He is the Avatar who survived, and he was frozen in an iceberg for 100 years. I'll get better at this, I swear. For 100 years, and he has since been unearthed, and now the trio is going to travel the world trying to train Aang for when he has to ultimately save the world from the Fire Nation. So these first 2 episodes are okay. They're not great. Between the 2 of them, I'd say The Avatar Returns is a little bit better because the pacing is a little bit more natural. It gets a little bit more interesting with the storytelling and the world building, and the animation's a lot better. Because the problem when doing any new show, especially a fantasy, and especially an animated fantasy, is with a fantasy, you have to basically create a world, and you have to give people a sense of how it works and suck them in really fast. But the problem is, depending on the details of the world, you run the risk of the episode turning very, very much into just kind of an exposition dump. And the show doesn't quite do that at first. Like the opening title sequence does sort of uh, lay things out for you, but the it never goes too far to where it just feels like it's dumping on you. With that said, these episodes are important, but I do think the part one of these two is a little does not hold up the best upon rewatches. It's an important episode because it's where things all begin. But every time I rewatch it, the dialogue always feels sometimes a little clunky, and the pacing is a little maybe not fast, but it's a little clunky, and the animation for whatever reason just feels kind of off. So the show is hand drawn technically, but I can't confirm this yet, but I think it was digitally painted, which is where it is drawn by hand, but the image is drawn on a computer because that does simplify the process of changing cells, since you can just put the background in there and then you can digitally animate over the background without having to change so many paintings. The painting can just stay there, and you can move the painting and you can move the characters, and it's just a good way to kind of save money on the animation. But the first episode, especially the scene where Aang comes out of the iceberg and his flying sky bison Appa, yeah, I'm gonna look for any excuse to show that thing, shows up. There's a lot of weird. The animation almost looks like there's interlacing issues. Like it kind of reminded me of the original Beast Wars show or the Halo game. It's not CG like that. It is 2D animated. But it did kind of look like there were a lot of interlacing issues sometimes. Like things just looked a little sloppy and a little cheap. And especially when you're watching it now in HD formats on Netflix or on a really clear TV, it does start to look a little off. It's not the whole episode, but there's some scenes where it's like, that looks a little weird. And it also looks weird too. So the show, I guess I should say right now, the show kind of has an anime aesthetic, and for years there was a huge debate about whether or not to call this show an anime or just like a traditional American cartoon. Nowadays, I'm okay calling it an anime because even though it's not technically produced in Japan, it is an American product. A lot of the animation would have been outsourced to Japanese companies or Korean companies or Chinese. Animation's outsourced to all sorts of companies. So even if you don't want to think of it like that, anime is one of those things where to me it's kind of like if I know it when I see it, and this show does feel a little more anime-ish. It's like, to me, anime is kind of based on not only the style of the show but also kind of the themes and the story motifs and the acting. Like there's a lot of things that kind of differentiate it from a typical Americanized cartoon. Like even something like Cowboy Bebop, even though it is very much an anime, it was made in Japan, it was produced in Japan by Japanese people first and then dubbed into English. It feels very Americanized. It's kind of like if Quentin Tarantino directed an anime, but I'm getting beside the point. So it's an anime, and I say that because a lot of the scenes where they get the really goofy faces, like that's not a good example, but these very goofy faces, they kind of look a little choppy, and that's kind of the point of these expressions, because when you do them in animation, it's to kind of save money on being very detailed. Like you could get, I can't do this properly, but if you get like real close up on someone, or again, you can go cheaper on the line work. That's why they do it. But here, the animation on the show when it's being dramatic is really good, and especially later on as the show goes on, it gets like really, really good. When it's very early on and it's doing that kind of that exaggerated face thing, it does feel a little awkward. And the story itself is it's fine. It's setting things up. It's setting like all the main players in motion. You got Aang, Katara, Sokka, Zuko, and the new favorite character of the show, basically Iroh. I know I'm a little early in that, but anyone who knows Iroh knows he's great. And I will say now, so Iroh, oh my god, I'm not going to go into details yet, but the original voice actor for Iroh is a man named Mako, or Macau. He's, I think he's a Japanese guy. Mako, you all know Mako, those of you who know the show. But it was kind of weird hearing him all these years later, because I've met the replacement voice actor for Iroh, and they're very different. They're both very good, but they're very different. And it was sort of weird for the first time in years just hearing Mako's voice. And I don't know what that says about the show, but it's just something I thought was worth mentioning. So I think that's about all I can say. This is where the journey begins, and it hooked a lot of people in. It started one of Nickelodeon's most popular and long-lasting franchises that the network was constantly trying to undermine, but we'll talk about that later when it happens. But yeah, that's the first opening two-parter of the show, and it I will say though, I guess I should say it's not a great opening. I know I kind of mentioned that earlier, but there's some openings of shows where they hook you in immediately. Like I always think of Game of Thrones, where that first episode was just, and especially the opening scene was unbelievable. Like it just did so much for to bring you in and engross you in this world and the atmosphere. And my raccoon eyes, I'm just noticing, but this show doesn't really do that. It's kind of a slow burn where if you excuse me, sorry, if you knew nothing about this show going in, it might not be the best way to draw you in, but it did draw a lot of people in, and I've got other episodes to talk about, so hopefully that was a good intro for you. And till next time, onwards and upwards, my friend.